Hey guys, if your family or loved ones are dependent on you bringing home an income, you need term life insurance ASAP. This can be hard to think about, especially if you're young and healthy, but you want to be prepared and protect those that are closest to you. YFP has partnered with Policy Genius, America's #1 independent online insurance marketplace, where you can get quotes from multiple companies in just 2 minutes using their easy-to-use interface. Go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/insurance to get your free quotes today. That's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/insurance.
The goal was having freedom and of course money, because it's great to have a job, but the fact that you have to exchange time for money, that was the idea that I didn't want to have to completely depend on.
You're listening to the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, a show all about inspiring you, the pharmacy professional, on your path towards achieving financial freedom. Hi, I'm Tim Ulbrich, and on today's show, I welcome Montrell Taylor, a rising P3 student at Howard University, to talk about his experience in real estate investing through wholesaling. We discuss why he chose real estate investing as a side hustle and how he sees this fitting in with his pharmacy career in the future. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. As I've shared with this community before, we have lots of exciting goals and aspirations around real estate, education, and content for the YFP community here in 2019 and beyond. I've shared that Jess and I have a goal of buying our first rental property in 2019, and I've got the vibe that many pharmacists out there in the YFP community have similar aspirations, or at least have a desire to learn more about real estate. Therefore, we want to help bring you some more examples of pharmacists active in real estate investing that can help teach, encourage, and motivate us, the YFP community, to learn more. On episodes 9 and 109, Carrie Carlton shares her journey of getting started with real estate and building out her portfolio, which has diversified her assets and provided her with an alternative income stream. That's why I'm excited about this week's episode and the chance to interview rising P3 student Montrell Taylor to talk about his journey in real estate investing through wholesaling. So for our listeners, for some quick background, I had the chance to meet Montrell out at the APHA annual meeting in Seattle, Washington back in March 2019 through a mutual connection, Alex Barker. Many of you know Alex. He is the creator of the Happy PharmD, a frequent guest on this show and author of the book Indispensable. After having a chance to talk with Montrell, I was blown away at his maturity, his professional demeanor, his entrepreneurial mindset, and his ability to understand the importance of diversifying your investments. You know that feeling when you meet with someone and you think, wow, they have the it factor, that drive, that mindset that will result in them doing great things. Montrell has that it factor, and I'm pumped to be able to share his journey with you, the YFP community. So Montrell, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Excited for this. And I genuinely meant what I said. You know, I think I even shared with my wife that evening, like when you have those interactions where you meet somebody and you can just tell they have a fire within them, you have that factor and your future is bright. So I'm excited to be here in person in Baltimore at YFP headquarters to do this interview. So one of the questions I don't think I asked you when we met is how did you get connected with Alex Barker? What was that backstory?
So with Alex Barker, I actually seen him on Instagram one day. And I was just kind of interested in, because I seen him actually on an ad, and a couple of days later I seen him again on LinkedIn. So me and him actually connected through LinkedIn, and we set up a phone call because I noticed that he also was an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So we just got to talking, and I mean, just our conversation was just real easygoing. We both talked about how we wanted to, make sure we were able to succeed in our own businesses. And he was just able to give me like a lot of great information about just being an entrepreneur. So I think just both of our mindsets kind of clicked once we had that first conversation. And then we were thinking we should have some sort of meetup to talk to more investors at the APHA conference. So last year I went to I went to my first APHA conference. And
it was Nashville, right?
Nashville, correct. Yeah. And my mind was just blown, as like I just seen so many opportunities and got the chance to network with so many different people. And I just knew that the next year, which was this year, I was excited to go back. And then when I seen that Alex was also going to the conference, me and him just connected like, you know what, let's try to set up a meetup at the conference. So we did that, and that was actually the first time we ever met in person. So the same time I met him and you was literally the first time we've ever met.
It's all about networking,
all
right?
All about networking. It's important because I always hear so much, your network is your net worth. And I think pharmacy school has showed me how important that is, because I've got a chance to meet so many people just off of networking.
Yeah.
You know, and people get so kind of scared about the idea of networking because it's kind of like you're trying to pick somebody's brain to benefit from it in some way. But the only thing you're doing is just building relationships. And that's what business is all about.
I love it. So before we talk about your experiences with real estate and more specifically wholesaling, I want to talk about your journey into pharmacy and get a little bit more about where your career as a pharmacist is going as you get ready to go into your P3 year. Obviously, I'm sure you have many questions still to answer about that. But so why pharmacy and why Howard? Talk us through that journey.
Okay, so why pharmacy? I've had that question a lot. Pharmacy is something that I wanted to do ever since I was in high school. Every time I seen a pharmacist, I just would have this perception of them of like they're just smart, they're personable. I can talk to them about like issues and like things like that. So as I progressed through school and I started to learn about how the body works, and like, you know, as I took like chemistry and biology and stuff like that, I was amazed at the fact that how these small molecules and compounds, how they can change the composition of the body. So when I learned about that, it was interesting to me. And after I got my degree in biochemistry, that's when I really had a great understanding of how the body works. But I wanted to increase my knowledge and just learn about like, why do people like get sick, and how do these small pills create a small, like, how do they create a difference in people's daily functions and stuff like that. So that's what really made me want to be a pharmacist. And I also have a family member who's a pharmacist. And then when I seen her progress through school, and I just see the lifestyle she's living, it motivated me to be a pharmacist. And the reason I chose Howard was because I wanted to get out of Tennessee. Because even though I enjoyed growing up there, I kind of wanted to experience something new. So one day I was just applying to different schools. I applied to a school in Georgia, and I applied to Howard. Only applied to 2 schools. So once I came to Howard for my interview, I was just amazed at, like, after talking to people, and they told me about how great the environment is and how great the learning experience was. I fell in love with the campus, and it was just funny because when I actually got accepted to Howard, I actually called my mom, and me and her just like we broke down and just started crying on the phone because I was just so excited to actually get a chance to explore Howard, because I just heard so much about the school, and then the fact that I'm able to actually be a student at one of the best schools in the nation is great.
So shout out to Howard. We haven't had a guest from Howard before, but it's awesome. And hopefully we'll have some opportunities to work with Howard as well in the future. So biochemistry major. Now you're in pharmacy, and now we're going to add on to that real estate. So help me make this connection of why side hustle with real estate. I mean, those things don't often go together, right? What was the connection there?
They don't. So real estate makes the most millionaires each year. So after I graduated, which was in 2016, me and my brother, Stanford Taylor, none of this would have been possible without my brother. Where's he located? He is currently in Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. And he primarily works on our Memphis market. Okay. And once me and him graduated from college, we worked a job, and we had like so much free time because I was waiting to interview for Howard and all these different schools. So I had a break. And we actually worked at a call center, and it was fine. We made decent money, but we wanted something more, right? So it was just something that just clicked in our heads one day, and we actually watched this video from a guy named Rico Smith. This is a guy who's pretty famous in Memphis from wholesaling. Okay. And after watching his video, he just talked about how, you have to have a certain mindset if you want to live the life you actually want to live. And we watched the video, and he is also the one who spoke about wholesaling. Mm-hmm. And then when we learned that this is a way that you can get involved in real estate without using any money or credit, then we really had no excuse not to at least try. So I just remember one day me and my brother were just talking about getting started, and we were talking about like making our name for our company and stuff like that. And we both just agreed that if we wanted to be serious about actually starting in real estate, we had to just go ahead and just do it. So we just did it, and it's then took off ever since.
I love that story, because I think what stands out to me there is that out of 100 people that may listen to a video like that or read a book on real estate or whatever, maybe one is actually acting, right? It's the mindset. It's being willing to take a little bit of calculated risk.
Right. And then it's just so funny because us as humans, like, we put limits on ourselves subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say, for example, if you wanted to start a business, nobody is going to tell you specifically can't start a business. The only thing that's stopping you is you.
That's right.
That's the only thing.
Yep.
And I think that one time when I was listening to you guys' podcast, you guys made a great point when you said you have to get out of the way of you.
Yes.
Like, that makes so much sense, because we get so caught up in what may go wrong, and we don't have the money or the time. We limit ourselves to so much that we can do. And it's just crazy when we just have a completely different mindset. I feel like we all can do just great things.
That's great stuff. A lot of wisdom there. So what was the goal when you jumped in to wholesaling? Here you are getting ready to apply for pharmacy school. Obviously, some cash, of course, is the goal. But were you at the time thinking, hey, this could really lower my indebtedness, or this could diversify my assets? I mean, what was the goal of jumping into real estate at that point in time?
The goal was having freedom. Freedom, and of course, money, because, it's great to have a job. It's great to have a nice paying job. That's great. But the fact that you have to exchange time for money, that was the idea that I didn't want to have to completely depend on. So it really was the freedom, because we wanted to have a business where we could, first of all, we could control it, because, we are the owners. So since we have the, the power to do whatever we please as far as our own business, we really wanted to have freedom and money. Okay. Because money isn't everything, but to do the things you want to do, it takes money, because the country that we live in is very heavily relied on economics and cash flow. So the fact that wholesaling gives us the opportunity to have freedom and make money, it was the perfect combination. Yeah,
and I think you hear so many people say you're not going to get happiness from money, right? And I think that's true, but I think where you can derive happiness is from the freedom and the choices. And we talk all the time on the show about having options, right? So whether that be you want to start your own business, maybe you want to stay home with the kids, you have a sick family member you want to care about, you want to really pursue some philanthropic efforts that are important, like doing those things and having the ability to do those stress-free, right, are some of the things that provide happiness.
Right. And then, I mean, it's also jobs out there where you can actually have freedom and make money. So I'm not, talking bad about any type of job, but I just know me and my brother personally, we wanted to have something for our own, because my father, he also owns a business. He owns a cell phone store. Excuse me. So just being able to see him, like, he could always, when he wanted to, let's say, take off for one of my brother's football games, he just doesn't go to work, so just small things like that, and just being able to, have that freedom.
So before I ask you, and we get in the weeds on wholesaling, I have to know, like, you and your brother must get along then, right? I mean, how does that work between the two of you?
My brother is literally the exact same person as me. Like, we act the same, like my best friend, my road dog, everything. And I also have a sister as well, and we're the exact same. My sister is younger than us, and we wanted to build this business so we could take care of the entire family, because my sister she's the smartest one out of all three of us. She's the smartest one, but I just know that me and my brother, we wanted to do the groundwork so that we can, so that we don't have to call on our sister
Yeah.
to do work for us.
Sure.
So, I mean, we act the exact same. We get along a lot. I mean, we've had a couple of arguments, but when me and him argue, it's just funny because I don't know if you've had this case, but sometimes when you're giving someone constructive feedback, specifically to another male, they kind of take it offensive, right? So when me and him are talking about different things as far as business goes, the fact that we're brothers is like we can argue all day, but at the end of the day, we're still gonna be brothers. Like you're not gonna get rid of me. Like we're gonna be here, forever. And actually, growing up, we used to get in trouble if we fought each other, right? So we just always had this strong bond, and we just always had the mindset that whatever happens, we'll have each other's back. So
yeah, and I think iron sharpens iron, right? So I think when you get to that point where you're comfortable, with that feedback of each other, ultimately the business is going to get better.
Right, because it's been so many times where I've gotten great ideas from him and he's gotten the same from me. For example, I was just talking to him 3 days ago, and he was telling me how sometimes he does Uber Eats. And once I get into wholesaling, something that people do to find sellers is post bandit signs. And these are like the signs you see around the neighborhood that says like we buy houses and stuff like that, right? So something that he said that just made so much sense to me, he was like, man, you can do Uber Eats for 2 reasons that will benefit. Well, really 3 reasons. First of all, you make money. Secondly, you find out new places about the city, because I'm not from here. I'm from Memphis.
Yeah, so you're learning, right?
I'm still learning, right? So I'm still learning the area and things like that. And then third and most importantly, since we're driving, like dropping off orders and stuff like that, that also gives you the opportunity to put out bandit signs, right? So it's like you're making money by driving, you're double dipping. Yeah, that's awesome. And you also are improving your own business because you're attracting sellers by putting out these signs. So we always just feed off each other with great ideas. So
one of the things I want to go back to real quick, if Tim Baker were here, he would be preaching, find your why, know your why, have clarity around why you're doing what you're doing. And I love what you said about first financial freedom, but then also the mission around caring for family. I mean, it sounds like so much of that fuels what you're doing. So I think this is another great example for our listeners as you're looking at a side hustle, whether it's pharmacy related or not. Like what's the point? What's the goal? What are you trying to achieve? Because ultimately that's going to fuel you. And we'll talk here in a little bit how you balance this with other things. Right. But it's not like you have all the time in the world. So there's sacrifice, but you have a why behind it that's driving you. I do. Through those periods. So that's really cool. So talk to us about what is wholesaling. What does that term mean? And maybe even an example of something you've done that will help our listeners understand that.
Okay. So wholesaling is a way to essentially make money in real estate without using any of your money or using any of your credit. So wholesaling is essentially you are assigning a property from a seller to a buyer. So you play the middleman role. Yeah. So let me kind of break it down a little bit more. So the first part of wholesaling is finding a property. And there's a number of ways to find properties. You can actually drive around the city. And if you were to see a property that looks vacant, you could try to get in contact with the owner and just see if they're looking to sell it. Like I said, you can also post bandit signs. Bandit signs will be the most effective way to find sellers because people will contact you if they're looking to sell. So that kind of saves you from having to go out and find sellers. So
people actually call those numbers in the corner. I see those all the time.
Right. Okay. Like people see them and it's kind of like, I mean, who's going to call them? Yeah. But a lot of people call those numbers on the bandit signs.
So in those 2 examples, you're trying to identify properties that are not yet on market.
Correct. Okay. Because we want off-market properties at a discounted price. Because let's say if you were trying to buy a house, fix it, and put it back on the market. If the house is already at a market price, then you don't have much room to, buy it and put more money into it to fix it and put it back on the market, right? Right. So the key is getting properties at a discounted price that is way below the market value. So after you get a property after you find a property, the next step is to, like I said, get in contact with the seller. So after you get up, you talk to a seller, you're going to get this property under contract,
Okay.
which is an assignment contract.
Okay.
Which means that the seller is essentially assigning the property to you. So let's say if I'm the wholesaler in this sense, and let's say you're trying to sell your home. You call me from a bandit sign. You say, hey, Montrell, I have a home in Baltimore and I'm looking to get about 40,000 for it. What I'll say is, I don't know if I can get you 40,000, but I can take a look at it and I can see, if we can get close to that number.
Okay.
So I meet you in person. I see the home and I say, well, Tim, I can get you about 32,000.
Okay.
And you say, okay, fine. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this property under contract with you for 32,000 because that's all you want in order to be satisfied.
And you're not having to put any money down or anything at this point in time.
No money
right?
down.
Okay.
But what this contract says is I have equitable interest in this property.
Okay.
Okay. So now I have the property under contract with you for 32,000. Now let's say I go to Tim Baker. I know that he buys homes, right?
Yes. He likes to pay a lot for them. So yes.
Okay.
Margin's going to be
good. That'd be
here.
great. That'd be great. So I will go to Tim Baker and say, I have this property in Baltimore that, you can buy it, you can fix it up, you can either put it back on the market, you can rent it out. But the main thing that Tim Baker wants to see is the ARV.
Right. So explain that for our listeners, ARV.
ARV is known as the after repair value.
Yep.
What this is after you buy the property and put it into basically brand new condition,
right?
Like HGTV type condition. How much will this property sell for, after the work is put into it?
Right.
So what most investors do when they are looking to purchase properties, there's an equation that they use, which is called the 70% rule. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So I go to Tim Baker and I say, I have this property for, let's say, 40,000. You only want 32. Tim Baker says, well, I can give you 38,000. And I say, no, fine. Once we go to closing, you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. Tim Baker is going to be there. I'm going to assign this property from myself to Tim Baker.
So transfer essentially the property.
Transfer. Yep. And what I'm doing is I'm assigning the property to Tim Baker. So once we go to closing, I get paid an assignment fee. And that's essentially a wholesale deal.
And then that fee would basically be, you got it for 32, you sold it for 38. That 6,000 goes to you as the wholesaler.
Correct. And I didn't mention me putting down any money.
Sure.
I didn't mention running a credit check or nothing like that. The only thing it is, it's a skill set that has to be used in order to make money, because like I said, you don't need money to get started in real estate. You just have to have motivation and really just a work ethic.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of the Bigger Pockets podcast. And one of the things they always talk about on that show is, the most difficult part of the equation is finding deals. So you as a wholesaler, where you're not putting money down, you're basically taking that effort of finding the deal out of the equation.
Right.
So that if me as an investor who, hey, I don't have the time, Montrell, I can't go out there, I don't have the skill, I can't put out banded signs, like I'm willing to pay that wholesaling fee because I, as the investor, I still am running my numbers myself. So if I have to pay a wholesaler $4,000, but the numbers still work and I don't have to go find the deal, so be it.
Right. Because your whole thing is, okay, I'm going to pay this person $6,000.
Right.
And I'm going to buy this property for, what I say, 38,000. I can put maybe 10,000 into it, and I can either put it back on the market for about 60,000,
which would be the ARV after you do the work.
Right. So my profit as an investor is like what, 20 something thousand, something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, as an investor, they love wholesalers because what we're doing is we're doing the dirty work for them.
Sure.
But they still get to sit back, buy these properties, fix them up, and continue to make money. So everybody wins.
And I think I'm so glad we're starting, here with this example of what you're doing, because I think for many pharmacists, there's obviously different ways of going. There's flipping, which we can talk about here for a minute. There's buy and holds, but the main difference here with wholesaling being one mechanism getting involved in real estate investing is that time and effort and some sweat equity to get into this process is going to be more important. Obviously, if we have listeners out there that say, hey, I'd love to do real estate investing, I've got $100,000 in cash and I don't have a lot of time, wholesaling may not be the best move for them.
Exactly.
But for many pharmacists out there, they're like, hey, I'd love to diversify my revenue stream. I'm willing to put in the time and effort.
Right.
Maybe wholesaling is something to start with.
Right, because the goal of wholesaling is to, in addition to make money, you're also learning the housing market and you're learning how to become an investor.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you're working with so many different investors, you're kind of seeing what the process is if you wanted to buy and fix a house.
Yes.
and flip it, or if you want to buy it, put a tenant inside of it, if you want to buy it in Section 8, whatever it may be. Because the goal of wholesaling is to be able to eventually buy the properties yourself and, fix and flip or fix and hold.
Right.
That's the primary goal of most wholesalers.
Which you'll be able to do as you accrue, enough cash through wholesaling deals. You could then get involved in properties that need more of your cash up front and other things.
Right. So right now we actually have 2 properties in Memphis that we have bought and we're currently fixing, and we're putting a tenant inside of them within the next month. So
more turnkey in that?
Turnkey in a sense, but we had to put a little bit of work in it. Okay. Because turnkeys are properties that don't need any work. Okay. Like they are ready to, someone can live in it today. But we had to put in floors and we had to knock down some walls, and that's in Memphis. But in DC, it's a little different. In DC, Maryland, and Virginia, it's a little different because the properties are 10 times more expensive.
I say you moved to the most expensive market, right?
Right. Yeah. And then it's just in DC, it's just so funny because the properties are much smaller for 10 times the price. So it's a little bit more tricky when you're looking to buy and hold properties in DC versus buying and holding in Memphis. But
so are you typically, one of the things I've learned about wholesaling on Bigger Pockets and reading books, it sounds like often wholesaling is selling to a flipper, although not always. But I've always wondered, why doesn't the flipper just, build out a sub team that is out doing the work of finding deals and stuff? I mean, why is the wholesaling piece necessary in that process? Is it just something they want to focus on the flip and not focus on the deals, or
from the investor standpoint?
Yeah, from the investor standpoint.
I mean, you really don't get a lot of cases where investors can build a team of wholesalers, because investors can also work with the realtors, people who actually have licenses. Because some people kind of look at wholesaling well, this guy doesn't have a license, so why should I trust him to sell my home and stuff like that? So wholesaling is a little bit more risky than being a real estate agent, but the fact that you're independent, that gives you more freedom. And I mean, there could be an investor who builds a team of wholesalers. That's actually an option. Yeah. But I haven't met an investor who does that. So they just, because it's so many people who wholesale now, it's like, why would I start a team when I can just go, just contact a wholesaler now and just buy a property? So investors don't have much time. I think that's the biggest reason why they don't build teams of wholesalers, because they are either buying this property and trying to fix this other property and stuff like that. So
are you predominantly in the Memphis market then, or are you in other areas as well?
Predominantly right now, I'm in the Baltimore, PG County, and Maryland market, Virginia, me personally. Now, my brother, he is the one who is securing the Nashville and Memphis markets right now. Okay. So, I mean, we work on deals in Memphis all the time. And back when I was in Memphis, last summer, I was closing a lot of deals. So it just depends where I am at the time until I'm able to start my own team and, get people to go out and look at properties for me and kind of, do the dirty work for me. And that's something that I'm in the process of doing now, but it takes time. Yeah. It takes time.
Yeah. And obviously once you get the process done yourself, you can begin to think about how to scale it and build out the system. And I think we need you down in Columbus. So there's some good opportunities there.
I actually haven't got a chance to check out the market in Columbus.
It's pretty hot right now. Actually, I just was reading an article the other day in the Columbus Dispatch. I think it was in the month of March. Columbus was the hottest real estate market in the country.
Really?
which is great. I mean, it's a great city. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But, just geography and weather and other things, you wouldn't necessarily think that, but it is a great city. So
how far is it from here?
6 hours ish from Baltimore. So yeah,
It's not too bad.
So talk to me for a minute. How long you've been doing this? I think you mentioned earlier about a couple of years. How many deals have you actually worked through during this time period?
So I've been doing this for, like I said, about 2 years. And as far as how many deals have I done, well, I know last year we done about 10, 15.
Okay.
And that was in a total year. So that's about, because it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to close a deal.
Okay.
And that's if everything goes right with the paperwork and stuff like that. But this year alone, we closed about 8.
Okay.
About 8 so far. So this year has been going way better than last year, and we just hope to continue to build our business and build our brand, right? Because the summertime is when we see the most action. I don't know if that's when like people are ready to move and stuff like that, but I know for me personally, that gives me more time because I'm not in classes.
Sure.
So I'm able to go out and see these properties and talk to sellers and actually put my feet on the ground to get out and close more deals. So it's going to be a great summer.
So what would you say to the person that says, hey, Montrell, it's 2019, the market's red hot and it's impossible to find good deals out there? Like what's the response to that?
I would say people are buying and selling houses every day, literally every day. So it kind of goes back to the way we limit ourselves. That just sounds like another limit that someone tries to put on themselves, because people are wholesaling literally every day. Like I'm in like Facebook groups and like I follow people on Instagram, and you just see like so many people like post checks that they make in wholesaling, like literally every day, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 checks off one deal, right? So I would just say you have to go ahead and get started, because you can only do so much research and you can only be so skeptical about doing something. But the most important step is to just get started.
So to that point, let's get practical for their moment. I think a lot of listeners are saying, this is great. Montrell, he's a rising P3. He's after this. And, I, as a listener, would like to do something similar or get involved in real estate. And I appreciate your recommendation of just starting. Is there something you would recommend, a podcast, a book, what would be a next step that somebody could take?
Okay. I would recommend one guy that is very popular. Like I said, the guy who motivated me to start, a guy named Rico Smith. He is a very knowledgeable guy. Also, there's a guy named Max Maxwell who is very popular, and he teaches people how to wholesale all the time. But the most important step is to do research. Like, I wouldn't say just jump into wholesaling blindly, because we did have to do our fair share of like podcasts and YouTube videos and reading books and stuff like that. So I would say Max Maxwell, Rico Smith. There's also a guy named Tony the Closer. But there's so many, like, we have an advantage right now because technology, and like we just talked about, like technology is taking over. You can learn how to do anything online. You can learn a brand new language online.
Yeah. So
wholesaling is something that you can learn by just doing your research. But most importantly, you have to get started. You have to get out there. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to have people who, people are going to, talk bad to you, and they're going to, you may get cursed out sometimes.
It's a process,
It's
right?
It's a process. Like, nothing happens overnight, but you just got to get started. You got to be willing to take that chance, because you have to keep your mind set on the bigger picture. Like, think about what can happen. Like, don't even think about what can happen if it goes wrong. Like, only put your mind on, okay, what if as soon as I call this person, it's going to be a deal. I'm going to close the deal. I'm going to make this amount of money. Just always keep your mind set on the positive, because the more you think about the negative, you're going to just continue to limit yourself, because we all have 24 hours in a day, right? So we all can do whatever we put our minds to. And then I feel like growing up, we always heard the statement that you can you can do whatever you put your mind to. Like, we always hear that. And it's kind of like, who are you to tell me that, right? But I wanted to be a pharmacist in high school, and in 2 years I'm gonna be a pharmacist. And that's just a small example of I put my mind to being a pharmacist, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Yes.
Maybe I should have put my mindset on being a billionaire. Could have been a billionaire by now.
It's in the works. It's in the works.
Could have been a billionaire right now, but that just shows an example of literally it's all about your mindset.
I hope our listeners will go back and listen to that last 2 minutes, because it is mindset without question. And you are a great example of that. And I think that's such a great message. And one of the things you said, which I really like, is that in 2019, we are in the age of you can learn anything that you want to learn. Anything. We have it better than any generation that has come before us.
It's just like we have to really think about how technology has advanced. Like think about 10 years ago, where like you had to basically, the internet was connected to your phone, right? And it's like now we have internet like everywhere, and we don't even think about how advanced technology has became. But like literally you can do anything on the internet, and there's also classes you can take. Yeah. And of course they cost money.
Sure.
But from my personal experience, I've been able to succeed in wholesaling, and I haven't paid for any class. I've just done my own research. I've YouTube
books,
books, Bigger Pockets. And I had to get out there in the field and just, you got to learn from failures. Some people are so scared of failing, but it's like, okay, what if this goes right? What if you succeed at this? Right? So it just goes back to just think about the good thing that can happen from this.
Yeah, one of my, without going too far on a tangent here, one of my greatest fear with my 3 boys is that they won't learn how to fail. Because I think that as parents, you just have a natural tendency to want to protect that.
Right.
But there is such positive that can come from learning how to fail and
I've learned
learning
so
from
much.
that and moving on, right?
It's just funny because I've learned so much from failing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I first started, it took us a long time before we started actually making money. Like we didn't just hop into the game and just start closing deals left and right. Like we failed a lot of times. There's times where I personally almost had to go to court for a lady and business, because you know how sometimes people are not as honest as you want them to be in business. Yep. So once you actually start, you have to learn that even though you may not get any type of compensation from this deal, you still have to learn. Yep. And failing is the best teacher.
And if the path was so clear that there were never any problems, everybody would be doing it.
Everybody would be doing it.
So I see, I envision maybe at some point we'll get Montrell's pharmacist guide to wholesaling. We can work on that in the future. But let me wrap up here by asking you, I'm sure the students are wondering, if not others, like, how do you balance this with the demands of pharmacy school? You're on rotations, you're in coursework, you're working on this. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit in the summers, but you also have a pharmacy internship as well. Like, how are you practically balancing and managing these? And you did allude to, hey, everybody has 24 hours. But
everybody.
What works for you?
What worked for me is, so during school, it does get really tough. So what I do is I try to block out all of the distractions, because we have more time than we think about. And that's kind of weird that I say that, because if you think about the time you spend, let's say you're scrolling on Instagram for 10 minutes. Let's say you do that 5 times.
And then feeling like crap about yourself.
Right. And that's an hour.
Right.
Right. So the thing that kind of helps me balance out is just staying focused. So let's say if I have to study for an exam, I'm going to go ahead and put in 2 hours to study, and I'm going to put in at least an hour of cold calling. Cold calling, which is calling numbers to ask sellers if they want to sell a home.
All the while you're learning how to deal with rejection.
Exactly. Right. Yes. So like you never stop learning. Like I love to learn. Like you're always learning. So the key to being able to balance out all these different things is just staying focused and just make a schedule, stick to it, and just stay focused on what you have to do. Like, don't start studying and then go hop on Instagram for like 30 minutes because you just wasted 30 minutes. Now you're 30 minutes behind, which in turn puts you more behind on things that you have to get done. So I just create a strict schedule and I stick to it. And you have to also use your weekends to, catch up on things. Like it has been times where I have been, like kind of behind in the class as far as studying.
Sure.
So I've had to pull all-nighters, right? So, I mean, sometimes you just have to make those sacrifices. I mean, because if you want to actually live the life that you dream of living, you have to sacrifice for it.
Amen. And I'll say this quietly, I guess semi-quietly, since we're publishing this out to thousands of people. But I am an academic, so I'll say it somewhat quietly. But what you're learning while you're cold calling people in terms of not only rejection, but also how to effectively sell and promote and communication skills. I mean, that far outweighs anything else that you're likely learning. Certainly you have to pass your courses, you have to move on.
Correct.
Absolutely. I'm not saying you should not be doing that, but those skills that you're going to take away from that and how tangible those are and the benefit they're going to have for whatever path your career takes are so invaluable.
Right. And then when you're cold calling and people are actually giving you their rejection, it kind of teaches you how to just like go with rejection in life. Because let's say if you may apply for an internship and you don't get it, that's a rejection. But you just got to learn that life keeps going. And you have to just learn from, like I said, from your failures, and just learn about, just look at your process and learn and look at what didn't go right and just learn from that and just build upon it. But I think the most important thing is to just never give up and never stop. Because if you stop, then, I mean, you can't make any sort of progress. But as long as you're trying, it's like, okay, this may work. Because, they say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, that's right.
So just staying consistent and staying focused.
Yeah, and it's the compound effect of, not any one of those may feel really significant in the moment, but it's the micro changes and the things that are compounding over time that really have such a lifelong impact. So let me wrap up. This has been fantastic, and I thank you for your time. But I want to wrap up by I have a quote from Jim Rohn that is, "Success is not to be pursued; it's to be attracted by the person we become." And that stuck out to me when I thought of who you are in the short time I've gotten to know you.
Deep.
And I think that just the energy you've given me, and I think you're going to give to our listeners, speaks to who you are, and I think the career that you had ahead of you. So thank you for your time. I
appreciate that.
For navigating traffic.
Thank you for having me here. And I just think it's just so amazing how last year I was just reading your book, 7-Figure Pharmacist. And now a whole year later, I'm sitting here talking to you on your podcast, right? So it's just like, you never just know what, God has planned for you. And I just want to thank you for, like giving me the chance to come on here and just, like give my story and just talk to people. And I just want to make sure that people know that you can do anything if you just set your mind to it and just stay focused and stay consistent.
Thank you again to today's guest, Montrell Taylor, for joining us on this week's episode of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. If you want to get in touch with Montrell, you can do so via email at taylorbrosinvestments@gmail.com. Again, that's taylorbrosinvestments@gmail.com, or by following him on Instagram at TBI_TRE. Again, that's TBI_TRE. If you like what you heard on this week's episode of the podcast, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts each and every week. We appreciate you listening and look forward to having you join us again next week.